Hey everybody, welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello, and today I've got Elijah Lopez with Mansky Wealth. Eli, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Chris. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, this has been an interesting year with everything that's going on with COVID-19, and it's nice to have something that feels a little normal.
It is. It's like I was saying before we hit the record button, just treat it like a regular conversation and forget that we're even going to post this to my podcast. And then it's like we're catching up, which it's actually been quite a while because we were starting to do a lot of those networking events. I was actually going to one of the events that you were hosting once a month, right? Business and Brews here in town. So we can talk about all of that down the road. Of course, events are still kind of virtual for now. They're sort of happening to some extent, but if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick for the audience, who are you? What do you do now? Maybe a hobby or where you want to go in the future, whatever you feel like talking about.
Yeah. My name is Elijah Lopez, and I'm a financial advisor with Mansky Wealth Management. I manage a little shy of $60 million, and in particular, I do that for careerists or executives that have concentrated stock positions. So what that generally looks like is if someone works for a company like Exxon and you're an executive, you're paid in Exxon stock as part of your compensation, but insider information. And that can help those insiders buy or sell their stock without getting in trouble for insider trading or market manipulation. But for everyday people, if you're at like an Exxon or a Shell, it's pretty normal that you get stock options. The people at the water cooler are telling you to buy Exxon stock because everyone wants to support the company they work for. And you're buying it throughout your career. And you eventually get to a point where Exxon's making up a majority of your net worth and you need to become diversified. Especially since we're in Houston, I think everyone knows the Enron story. But just recently, Exxon lost about half of their value over the last 6 months. And if the majority of your holdings were in Exxon, you probably just lost half your net worth. And
wow,
that's not an easy pill to swallow for anyone.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I didn't really know what stocks were or what anything meant. I was just like, I just remember one of my friend's dads worked at Enron and basically lost everything. I didn't know what that meant. How do you, as a kid, put a value or understand what a stock is? Even now, a lot of people are still confused about what exactly it is and how it works. So your clients are primarily people who work in these bigger corporate locations, but you have a lot of advice that's helpful for business owners and people wanting to just stash cash away and invest in the right things as well, right? But your primary customer or your client is a bigger corporate executive type person.
Yeah, I've had to come up with just a general client profile. That's what my normal client looks like. But
that's good.
I have entrepreneurs, I have people with trust funds, I have people that live all around the world. I have an ambassador that I manage money for. So it's pretty diversified.
That's really cool. And I remember we actually met up probably maybe earlier this year or later last year at a Starbucks. And I was really impressed with your whole process. And I actually have your folder in my backpack still. To be fair, I haven't really touched my backpack since March when everything started going down. But I was very impressed with your presentation, and I wanted to mimic portions of that for my own business because you left me with, you asked me how you could help me, and then you handed me a folder that had your resume, a little bit about yourself, your target clients, so that I knew who you're looking for and how I can help you. And so I just wanted to, you probably didn't even realize, but that just left a really good impression on me. And it's a great tip for everyone listening as well to maybe have something like that where you can leave it with them. And that's a testament to the fact that 8 or 10 months later, I still have it with me because I've been wanting to replicate that. Of course, I've been kicking the can down the road of doing the work, but great job on that. So did you want to talk a little bit about, I know COVID's still kind of, like you said, people are burnt out a little bit on it, but it is still relevant and there are things happening because of it. How have you seen the market shifting? And you said a lot of your clients have been prepared as well for this, right? For some kind of downturn.
Yeah. Around 2018 or so, we started to sell investments for a high because we were worried about a bear market happening. For those who aren't familiar, bear market is a 20 to 30% drop in the S&P 500 from all-time highs. And really, there wasn't anything we were particularly focused on. I don't think anyone could have expected a global pandemic to happen. but we were just worried about the market dropping. So we started to create more cash, and we started to tell clients that we were preparing for the market to drop. And, come the beginning of 2020, I actually had a few clients that were getting annoyed with me. They were saying, we have so much cash, the market keeps going up, when is the market going to drop? And we just wanted to be prepared for the downside because we've had the longest up market in all of modern history. And then, come February 2020, COVID reached the United States and we started to see the market fall. And it was a complete just shift in attitude. Where before people were thinking about how much money they were losing out on, then they were calling me saying, we're so happy that we have extra cash. We're so happy that, we're able to make purchases while the market's low. And, I think that's really important for, whatever you're doing in life, to have a plan and to be prepared for the worst, regardless of what happens. Because, too many times I think people, they're caught with these emergencies and there's a knee-jerk reaction. We saw that sell-off in March and April. And there are people that, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they're going to say, well, I invested in the stock market and it's a bunch of baloney because I lost money in March of 2020. But once again, it was an emotional knee-jerk reaction where we had a plan, we carried it out, and we're continuing to do that.
That's great. And like you said, no one could have anticipated something like COVID happening, but at the same time, you were anticipating something happening with the market where things would drop a bit. And that's a good lesson for everyone. It's been something I've kind of struggled with since I left my corporate job when I had a nice steady every 2-week paycheck. I remember talking to a financial advisor and they looked at my portfolio and were kind of giving me like a little free thing, almost like a lead magnet, just to maybe give me as a client, but give me some feedback on my current standings. And they're like, oh, at this rate, you're going to be great. You have like no debt. You only have good debt. Like you have your house, your mortgage, your car's paid off, your student loans are paid off, and you're stashing away all your money into different investments. And I'm like, awesome, great. But then as soon as I quit the corporate job and now I can't just put a steady monthly paycheck away because I'm paid on commission and maybe I didn't get paid, maybe a deal got delayed, right? It makes it a little more difficult. And for those of us who aren't so great at systemizing the planning, it can be one of those things that we're going to get to that we don't really get to until we need it. And then we just can never quite get that emergency fund in place like we want. So do you have any tips for how maybe someone who has inconsistent income can plan for that?
I think it's always important to be systematic. And sometimes it's a little more challenging, especially when you're living paycheck to paycheck or you don't know when the next flow of income is going to come in.
Yep.
But I think a good way of tackling that is to have all of your money automatically transferred to your savings account and then to review your spending and to know to a T what your monthly budget looks like. And then every single month, just transfer cash out of your savings account into your checking account and live off the cash that's in your checking account. Because then if you need extra cash for the month, you're going to have to pull from savings. You're going to see your net worth fall. And you're going to see that you're not keeping true to the promise that you made to yourself of working with your budget. Too many Americans, they have cash available through their debit card and they spend it all. And at the end of the month, they're wondering why they don't have any cash. But the reality is when you're doing that, you're letting your lifestyle dictate your spending instead of your budget dictate your spending.
Right. I've heard some good systems like this. I read a book called Profit First, and I created a new account, and there's different savings accounts. It's basically the envelope system, but digitally, right? Or on your bank statement. So you can create these different ghost accounts almost for different percentages of your savings. So I am implementing that. Every commission check I get, I've got certain percentages, and it's not quite as automated yet as I'd like it to be, but I do have some movements that I make immediately for taxes, for savings. That way, like you said, I don't see it, out of sight, out of mind. I don't feel like I can use it because it's no longer in my checking account.
And then, 1 year, let's say you sell, 500 million in real estate and you get a giant pay raise.
Jeez.
Well, then you're not going to feel it, because it's just coming in, you're living off of your monthly budget, and you can choose later on to give yourself an increase in lifestyle.
Right.
But that cash isn't just coming in. Also, for people that are fans of the Dave Ramsey envelope method, there's an app called Envelopes that allows you to do exactly what you just shared with me.
Awesome. I didn't know that. I'm going to write that down. So the app's actually just called Envelopes.
Uh-huh.
Genius. Envelope, envelope. I don't know. I say them
I'm a
both
big fan
interchangeably.
for it, yeah.
I'm going to write that down, and I'll definitely provide that in the show notes for anyone who's listening along or watching on YouTube. So envelope app, and basically for those who aren't really familiar with that, the idea is you've got these different envelopes back in the day with certain amounts of cash, and like $50 is your bill is your budget for food this week, or whatever the budget is. Maybe 50 is not reasonable, but and the thing is that once that's out, you can't really dip into other envelopes to pull cash out. And if you follow that system, you'll be able to actually watch your money and your savings grow in certain areas. I tend to be guilty of quote unquote investing in myself. And I'm like, oh, I don't need a budget for food. I like to work out and I need to build muscle and put on size. So I should eat high quality meats and buy whatever I need. And so I need to slap myself on the wrist for that and actually stick to a budget and maybe more of a diet. I kind of eat everything. I'm on a seafood diet. I eat everything in sight. And that envelope method doesn't work so well for me.
Yeah, honestly, I think there are two different types of people. I have some clients where they're extremely detailed, and every dollar that comes out of their checking account is budgeted for in advance. They know that we're going to have an oil change once every 3 months, and they have that budgeted into their weekly budget to make
That's
sure
amazing.
because they need that structure. And then I have other clients where they're just naturally good savers. They naturally spend below their means. And, month over month, they're just spending below their means, transferring money to savings. And, every 6 months, they have a lump sum of cash that they need to get invested, and we get it invested. And I think one of the important things is to be honest with yourself with where you're at and to respond to it. Because if you're not being honest with yourself, you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're going to keep hitting your head against the wall. But if you can realize who you are and the kind of spender you are, you can start setting yourself up for success and build from there.
Exactly. And this is something I've talked about on previous episodes as well, is that you've got to build systems and structure, kind of like you said. I think you use the word structure because like if I want to go work out tomorrow and I don't set my alarm, and then if I wake up, I have to go find my workout clothes, I'm adding all these barriers and it's not going to happen. Instead of if I actually have my alarm and then I have my clothes ready to go in a stack with my water gallon filled up. And so it makes it so much easier because there's no friction to making those changes. And so now it takes 2 seconds to get my clothes, change, and go for a run instead of hitting the snooze button and sleeping in and not doing that thing that I wanted to do for myself.
Yeah, if you know what the pain points are, you can already address them in advance. And you and I are in the exact same boat with that. Usually I've got like 2 or 3 alarms because if not, I'm not getting out of bed.
Right.
But I've got those set up. I've got my suit laid out. I've got my shirt ironed, because I want to be ready to go in the morning.
Absolutely. And so you plan the next day the night before so that you don't have to think about it, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So in terms of advice for entrepreneurs, I know you said you've got some higher end executive clients as well as some entrepreneurs. Any advice or tips with everything going on right now? I mean, things to look at for investments or anything at all that you think is worth noting?
Yeah, there are a couple different things. The first is to make sure that you have liquidity. There's a lot of optimism when it comes to COVID-19. Every day we're looking at the different pharmaceutical companies, and it seems like different pharmaceuticals, whether that's Pfizer or AstraZeneca, everyone's saying we're wrapping up trials. By the end of the year, I think we'll have a vaccine and things are going to be peachy from here. But, in reality, nobody knows what that's going to look like. It could be that come the end of the year, we don't have a vaccine, or maybe the economic recovery isn't as quick as we're assuming it's going to be. And if that happens, people are going to be caught off guard. And, we're going to have another economic environment similar to March. And I think if you're prepared now, while times are better in the short term, that it's going to make things easier for you in the long term. One thing that I've been really impressed with during this time is how Americans have responded. So the Fed documents savings rates, and the savings rate in the U.S. has jumped up to about 30%, where normally Americans were terrible savers. I think on average, about like 4 to 9%, and that's total savings.
Wow.
But like 30% is closer to what Japan does. But also, it's been documented that with the stimulus check, Americans have cut down on credit card debt, which, getting into debt, having fixed obligations, whether that's in your business, it's in your personal life, If you're not using debt appropriately, it's going to be a barrier to your growth. I mean, it's going to get you into trouble. You're going to lose money off of it. And that's another tip that I have is re-examine the debt that you have right now. I mean, interest rates are low. There are a number of different financing options, whether that's through the government. There are nonprofits that have lending options as well. There are a bunch of different banks that have really stepped up in an amazing way. Figure out what your different options are, and if you can lower your debt, if you can pay less in interest, now's the time to do that while people are optimistic.
Absolutely. So do you have any advice for anyone who's got maybe bad debt or high interest debt? Are there solutions worth looking at for maybe consolidating to a lower interest rate? I know some people, even some lenders, because I'm in real estate, they can structure the loan in a way where a portion of it pays off your credit card. Some lender was telling me about how it's super cool. They can pay off your bills and then your payment is rolled into the mortgage, something like that.
Yeah. So the best thing is to really know a handful of bankers, because different banks are willing to take different amounts of risk. And depending on what the bank is looking for at the moment, they might be able to roll credit card debt into a loan. They might be able to refinance at a lower rate. Something I like doing a whole lot is telling folks to take their debt and to put it into a zero interest credit card if they can pay it off in the next 12 months.
Right.
Because, generally with those zero interest cards, you have 12 to 16 months of 0% interest. And if you can be disciplined, if you can be honest with yourself and actually pay off that debt within 12 months, well, you've just taken a 16% plus interest rate and turned into nothing.
Absolutely.
You need to hit the reset button.
And you may just have a small balance transfer fee or something like that. But other than that, I mean, 0% interest for a whole year buys you time to actually be disciplined, save, make those payments, and pay down those cards.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a Dave Ramsey 101 course over here. I love it. So how about with the predictions for the remainder of the year? I know you said we're not really sure. We're still optimistic. Do you guys have anything in mind of like what you think may be the case based on what you've seen? And of course, we don't really know. We don't have a crystal ball. We're just talking.
Yeah. So I've been preparing for a drop as we get closer to the election. I think we've really become polarized when it comes to politics. I'm trying not to get too political here, but
right.
I think it's just been a fact since 2015, 2016, and Americans have become more polarized. And we really haven't had the normal election cycle that we normally go through. We had a one candidate who was just kind of pushed as the presumed candidate for the Democrats, but there was never any confirmation hearing or anything like that. We have another candidate who is the incumbent, who, depending on what poll you're looking at, is popular or not popular, but I feel like part of that's polarized as well. Mm-hmm. And I think as we get closer to the election, we're going to see more big up days and more big down days, because Wall Street likes what they can predict. And I think the rest of this year is very unpredictable because people don't know what businesses are going to look like in the next 6 months. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some bankruptcies. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more mergers like we currently have. I think it's anyone's game for the presidency, and I don't think Wall Street likes that. Also, I think regardless of who gets elected, there's a good chance that we'll see the market go down. I'm already starting to see tax pieces saying, if Joe Biden gets elected, we're expecting for taxes to go up, and here are some tax strategies to prepare for that. But I think if our current president gets reelected, there have been some powers that he's enacted through the Fed that haven't been fully defined as they have in the past. And we need some real definition behind that, because if not, I think it can lead to a dangerous place. Right now we've seen the Fed buy high yield corporate debt, and what happens if one of these companies goes bankrupt? The country just acquire a company, and what does that mean for us as American citizens?
Right.
I think things like that need to be figured out. And so because of that, we're getting ready for big up days, big down days. We're hoping to make some really good purchases for clients. But if the market still does go up from here, we've committed to a very modest, slow and steady buying schedule, because it could be that we're at the beginning of a new bull market and we want to be prepared for those up days. So we could be wrong, and in that case, we're buying at a slower pace. But if we are right, we do see more volatility. That's when we're looking to get more cash invested for clients.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing. I
Yeah.
recently interviewed a friend who's in real estate as well. I have like a private real estate investor group, and he owns
Nice.
about 30 properties. And he was saying it's kind of like what he does with his stocks. Whether times are going well or they're not going so well, he just continues to buy. He just, along the ups and the downs, as long as you continue to buy and you don't over leverage and you do your due diligence and you're not putting in more than you can afford to, you're going to be fine, because over time, I mean, things will start to trend back in that positive direction as long as, 50 years from now, we're all still here as a planet and all that good stuff. So is that kind of the advice that you tell your clients as well? I mean, obviously you prepare for the dip, but you're getting ready to start preparing for a bull market in case we're starting to head in that trajectory, right?
That's correct. With COVID-19, this year has been one of the biggest years for retail investors. The amount of individual just people that are getting into the market, it's at the highest it's been since the dot-com bubble, which is part of the reason I'm worried that the market's a little too high. But I also think you're going to have some beginner mistakes. And if you're someone who, right now the market's up, but your account's still in the red, I wouldn't worry too long as you have a long-term view, because over 90% of the time, U.S. markets have been up. So, give it some time, give it some years, and I wouldn't be surprised if your account, finally hits the black.
Awesome. Very good advice. Because I know, like you said, in March, when some people might have gotten burned or lost some money in the stocks, I mean, it's only when they have that knee-jerk reaction and it seems like common sense, because you hear all the books and all the people talk about it, like when things go down, do the gut check and just don't take it out. But I guess after it drops a certain amount and people are seeing their value drop, they freak out and they want to just, stop the bleeding. But that's what causes the bleeding versus just riding it out. So I don't know. It just seems I'm not too much in the stock game just yet. I've been just focused on real estate, but I have some friends lately that have been getting into it, and they've been telling me more about the emotional roller coaster when they put in a sizable amount compared to what they're used to, and it's starting to go in the wrong direction. So,
and I think that's why it's important to have a plan and to stick with your plan.
Yeah,
it's been psychologically proven that when you have a financial loss, especially on investments, that you physically feel that pain. I mean, it affects who you are. It affects your day out. And if you're not prepared for that pain, it's going to be a lot more difficult. I had clients that for the last 4 to 6 months, they haven't even looked at their statements because they know it's down. In their head, they know eventually things will come back, and they don't want to put themselves through that pain. I mean, who wants high blood pressure?
Right.
Instead, they're just ready to ride it out for the long term. And if you have that kind of mindset, you can be prepared for it. But if you don't, it's going to be a lot more of a roller coaster.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I mean, I follow that advice even with news and whatnot. I mean, honestly, I know ignorance is bliss isn't always a good thing, but I haven't really looked at the news. I'm practicing social distancing and being safe, and I'm not going to like a big boat party or anything anytime soon. But at the same time, I'm not really sure how many COVID deaths there have been. I'm not really sure about all of that. I've just been doing the work. I'm having a record month right now. I have 5 deals set to close in real estate. Thank you. And I feel like while so many people are sucked into the news and they're getting the doom and gloom, those who are working and keeping their head down are the ones who are starting to take up market share. And same thing, one of my friends said his 401k turned into a 2K, or he was making that joke that it went down. And I mean, I haven't really looked at those investments either, because I know it's not going to be great, most likely. But at the same time, I'm there to ride it out for the long term, like you said, your clients are. And so I think that's a moment when ignorance can be bliss, because you know that it's helping you avoid the heartburn, which could potentially lead to you having the knee-jerk reaction of making that decision to take the money out and actually, absorb those losses.
Yeah, and I love your idea of not focusing on the news right now and focusing on the future. I think the people that are hustling right now are going to be the leaders of the next decade. And that's because there's so many people that, lemons have rained down from the sky, and they're saying all shucks, and they're watching too much Netflix, and they're eating too much, and they're just counting their lemons when there are entrepreneurs that are using these lemons and making lemonade. And I think those are going to be leaders because they're taking advantage of how things are changing. They're ready to adapt, and they're ready to be there when people have a need.
Absolutely. And I actually plug in and get into Zoom meetings with several entrepreneurial and business owners in Houston. And there's a mastermind call that I do every Friday. It's like a book club, but I'm the youngest person on the call. Everyone there has been in their industry for 30 plus years. We've got a real estate broker. We've got an inspector, someone who owns an inspection company, someone who's been in the lending. So they're very plugged in my industry, and I'm getting tidbits every time I get on a call because they've seen the ups and the downs before. And one of the guys who owns the inspection company was talking about how he's very excited for the opportunities that are coming up, and he's kind of like your clients. He's been preparing for like some kind of downturn, and he's been storing up cash, and he's in a buying position where he'd be able to buy out competitors to grow his business, so that on the other side of this, that's where the generational wealth will be built. Because times like these, well, I guess things are still kind of going up and down, but in these uncertain, volatile times is when opportunities arise, and you need to be in that position where you can actually move forward on them instead of not having the cash to do so.
Yeah, there's so many times where someone will bring up one of their favorite securities and they'll say, if I had just bought that back in 2008, I'd be so rich right now. And it's like,
yes.
Well, why didn't you do that? There was an opportunity. But when there's uncertainty, when you're scared, that's the time to get money in.
Exactly. And I've heard that so many times. If you just paid this much for this stock back in this year, like Apple or Coca-Cola, you would be a millionaire by this many more times. It's interesting to see, and you're like, man, I should have done that, or why didn't my grandparents do that? But at the same time, hindsight is 20/20, and so the best way to actually do it. The quote that I think is really powerful here is the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now or today. And that's so true because, maybe you missed the boat the first time, but now's the time to get started. Don't just put it off until the future, or it will never happen.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why it's important to have a plan and to be systematic, because it's so easy to say, well, I'm going to start that tomorrow. You were talking about working out. A lot of people are like, I'm going to run that marathon tomorrow. That's when I'm going to feel it, and that's when it's going to be right. But I think in reality, there's never going to be that time where in your heart it feels perfect, where everything aligns. But if you just start chipping away at something, and if you work it for 20 years, you're going to have that tree that you were talking about.
Exactly. And if you're just making these little changes, I think I heard someone say, 1% better every day. That's all. It doesn't sound that unreasonable. I could do 1% better today. Okay, great. It's not that much. But over time, it compounds. Same thing with like compounding interest and whatnot, right? That's the eighth wonder of the world, I think Einstein said. And it's true, because all these things that you feel like you're not making much progress, like it's not really changing. I mean, I closed my first real estate deal about a year ago as a real estate agent. And I remember that first deal, I was so excited. And a year later, I'm about to close 5 in a month, and imagine a year from now or 5 years from now, if I just stick with it. A lot of people don't make it in your industry, in my industry. After 5 months, they don't see traction, and then they quit and they start something else when they're so close to starting to hit that momentum. And so I think the same thing's true for, like you said, working out, for investing, for growing a business, sticking it out for the long haul. That's something that is difficult in today's microwave mentality society, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. And then also keeping your ego in check. It's easy to look at your neighbor and say, well, I want what they want. I think that's what happens with overspending, or with people that, they're ready to close that deal and the deal never comes. As they're looking over at other people and they're saying, well, they're doing so well compared to me. But don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to the goals that you have, and keep comparing yourself to the goals that you have until you're happy with what you've reached for. And maybe that's more than other people, maybe that's less than other people, but that doesn't matter if you're being honest with yourself and if you're just working to be happy with yourself.
Exactly. I shared a video. I was doing a solo episode on Zoom, and I shared my screen and found a YouTube video. You've probably seen it on social media as well, where it's a guy who's in a helicopter. It shows a helicopter, and then it shows a car, and the car's like, man, I wish I had a helicopter. But it was a nice car. It was like a BMW. And then there's a guy with a you've never seen this video? It's all about perspective, and it's very interesting because then it shows the guy in the broken down car with the cracked window looking at the BMW saying, I wish I had that. And it ultimately ends with someone who's in a wheelchair who's looking at the person walking saying, I wish I could walk. And so it's all about perspective, and we always want what others have when we should be grateful for what we have. And like you said, others are going to have more, others are going to have less. I mean, keeping up with the Joneses is a phrase. It's like songs about it and stuff I've heard, because it's a real thing. You're always comparing. And I think things like Instagram make it a little bit more difficult, because it seems like everyone's living their dream life. They're all posing in front of the island with the six pack, whether it's real or not, I don't know, right? Great abs, a Lamborghini in the background. And we're like, I'm not there yet. What's going on? But if we compare to our own progress, like how far have we come in the last 1 year, 5 years, we'll be much more impressed. And I guess we'll be motivated to continue, because we're actually seeing the progress instead of always putting ourselves down compared to another goal that someone else has achieved.
Yeah. And you were talking about watching less of the news. I think that also applies for social media. If you can spend less time on social media, or if you can completely cut out of your life, I've got an Instagram account. I think social media is not the worst thing in the world, but it's fast food. If you eat fast food every day, you're probably not going to be too happy with how you feel or how you look. But if you eat fast food once a week, it's not going to kill you.
Exactly. And even what you're absorbing on those things, like what are you following? Are you getting a bunch of messages about all the terrible things happening? Or are you following all the positive motivational quotes and the things that feed your mind, at least better things, better news overall? So I make sure to, if I'm seeing a page that's posting a bunch of weird stuff or negativity, I definitely unfollow, or at least, even if it's a friend, I won't necessarily unfollow, but you can make it in a way where you won't see as many of their posts, right?
That's so if I frown twice at someone's post or their profile, I try to get it out of my life. Then I just stop being negative. I'm going to get a bad attitude.
I love that. I actually saw someone took it as far as, there's a plugin, I can't remember the name. It was actually my virtual assistant. I'm friends with him on Facebook too. And for productivity, he has some kind of plugin that blocks your newsfeed on your desktop. So on Facebook, it won't show you anything. It just shows you a motivational quote. And you can set time limits, I believe, so that maybe during your productive hours, during your working hours, you can't see that stuff. So you stay focused. And that way, you're not getting distracted, and then you go watch a cat video, and now you're watching the NASA launch or something. We can be tied into these endless loops of news and drama and gloom and doom and keeping up with the Joneses, which takes us away from our goals, our financial goals, and actually our day-to-day goals for work and whatnot. So good advice. I was going to say, do you want to talk a little bit about Biz and Brews?
That's what I was about to bring up.
Okay, awesome. I wanted to see, because for those listening, Business and Brews, I was looking for more events to go to. I'm in real estate. I have a lot of clients that are buying and selling in town. And so I was like, I need to just meet people and have more friends in general. And I actually had not heard of Business and Brews. I'd always gone to like real estate networking events only in my niche. And I found Business and Brews. And I remember the last one that we had before everything kind of slowed down with COVID was like your record attendance, right? It was like 250 people or something like that.
Yeah, we were on the rooftop of Buffalo Bayou, which is one of the biggest breweries here in Houston.
Amazing downtown view.
Yeah, we had gotten to a point where they actually let us rent the deck as part of just us showing up. Like, it was completely for free. But it's because we had grown to a point where it made sense for them from a business perspective. It was really neat for me because I remember when I first started Business and Brews, I was calling breweries, and like they treated me like I was trying to sell them something, or they're really leery of the idea. But I think that, if you're passionate about something, if there's something you really enjoy, and if you want to meet people, use that passion as a way to meet people. And, I've brewed beer for about a decade now. I'm a really big craft beer fan. If we want to talk about beer, we can talk about beer for hours. So Business and Brews was an easy way for me to get together with other people that like craft beer, but also to network and to grow my business. And
that's super cool.
Yeah, when we first started, I think we had 40 people at a local brewery called St. Arnold's. And it was really me just trying to like hustle people into the room. Like, I was calling anybody and everyone that I was friends with, being like, please show up to this event.
You had 40 people on the first one?
Yeah, and it was like
a pretty good amount.
Success. Yeah, I was really excited about it. But compared to how we've grown nowadays, I just feel like we're really lucky that people have believed in us. We haven't charged a fee for the event, we've always told people, if you're having a good time, come back, invite your friends, and it's grown organically. And, what else could you ask for?
Yeah, and we actually met, you and I, at a WeWork event. I guess if you know Oasis, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so some people put it together, and actually I've interviewed Oasis on the show as well. And I remember you were talking about that, and it really reminded me of what I've done with my podcast of just continuously doing one. I did a podcast every week. I now do one every 2 weeks, or no, twice a week rather. And you were doing an event, and you were growing it slowly but surely. And you told me how many people were attending. And I remember like, okay, Business and Brews, let me follow them on Facebook and like them. And then I went to the next event, and I was very impressed, and I started going to that regularly. And so you built a community, you did something you were passionate about, and it was about 2 years, was it, for you to grow to where you're at now?
But I think, that's true for, like I said, anything you're passionate about. And that's part of what originally attracted me to you, was talking about your podcast at that event and talking about how you were just interested in doing it. It organically grew, and then it grew into something bigger than yourself. And I think that's something that we can all take away is just work at your passion, let it grow over time, and it'll become something amazing.
I love that. And I think we were actually talking about ideas with, you hadn't tried to monetize or anything. You hadn't really charged anything. I'm sure you've got a business out of it, because I've done that with real estate, and even my podcast. Someone that I interviewed, she's closing on a house with her husband this month. So I'm literally going to have like a $10,000 commission as a result of value generated through the podcast. So while I haven't sought ways to monetize it, the value I'm putting out is coming back to me, which is really cool. And I'm sure you saw the same thing with your events, right? I think we were talking about maybe if you could have some kind of sponsors, and they could have a certain budget so they get to advertise, and you guys get to generate some kind of income for putting it together. Did you guys ever talk about that some more, or brainstorm about ways to pursue sponsorship?
And after we talked about it more, and we actually had a gentleman who's really big on franchising it and us doing a national tour.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, we've got a handful of those. But the way that's been monetized is the exact same way as your podcast. Is, as the months turned into years, there were people that I met at Business and Brews, and they became really good friends. And I got to know them better. I got to know their families better. They trusted me. We'd work together, or they'd trust me with one of their friends and get a referral through that. If I'm spending 2 hours of my time drinking beer with my friends, and I'm growing my business doing it, I don't need to sell it and do a franchise tour. Like, let's just keep doing that, and it's great.
Yeah, and I think one thing I've heard as well is when people love doing art, for example, like my girlfriend loves to paint and just for fun, but some people are like, you should charge for that. My dad mentioned, like, why don't you sell some paintings? But I've heard it said that sometimes if you start trying to monetize something, or you try to sell it, you no longer have that passion, because it feels like a job instead of actually your passion. So I think there's a fine line, because if you had franchised it and gone on a world tour or across the country, maybe it would become more of a chore for you versus a passion project that you're actually happy and excited to do. You may be like, man, I don't want to go to whatever state next month, and I have to schedule it, and the logistics and inviting people. It becomes more of a headache sometimes. So I really love what you said there as well. And regardless of whether or not you can get something immediately out of friends or people attending, the friendship alone is amazing. And if you get a referral out of it down the road, even better.
And not monetizing it has opened other doors for us. Like, actually, before COVID, so this was supposed to happen in April, we were going to be the opening event for the largest beer festival in Houston. I think one of the 10 largest beer festivals in the United States.
Wow.
But the reason the founder was interested in us is because our goal was to support local breweries. And he was like, I like that you haven't monetized, that you're there to support local breweries, that you're building local business, and that's your focus. And I was telling you, we have something that we're rolling out later this month, and it's been in response to the struggles that breweries are facing. So I don't know how many of the folks that listen are beer fans, but 1 in every 3 breweries is supposed to go out of business by the end of the year.
Wow.
It's been really tough on local breweries. If you haven't picked up beer from a local brewery recently, I'd encourage you to do that. But what our new format in light of COVID is going to be is we've started collaborating with different breweries around town. So we get customized 6-packs that are exclusive just for Business and Brews members. and we're going to let folks buy it throughout the month. They get that customized 6-pack. But then at the end of the month, we'll all hop onto a Zoom call together. You get exclusive time with the brewer. There's no charge for that as long as you've spent money supporting the brewery. And you can put your contact information in the chat. People can network on the side after the event, but it's just about building community and supporting these local breweries again. That's
a really good idea. I remember you were talking about that and the creativity, because so many people are having to pivot. I tried to drop off some dry cleaning yesterday to a cleaners in Edo where I live, and they had like the metal gates closed, and I was like, wait, I swear it was here, but it's not there. And it was open when I looked on Google Maps, but they've shifted their business model with everything going on. They're like, hey, we're only doing pickups and deliveries, and we only clean on this day and that day. And so a lot of people are struggling right now. And I mean, I feel pretty fortunate to just have to work from home, and I get to go out and generate income without the massive overhead like some of these places have. And so there are real challenges. And I really do appreciate that you're encouraging our listeners to support their local businesses and breweries however they can, because I can't imagine having to fork out the amount of overhead they have and just the cut in demand. Like if you've driven past Midtown, I went past Midtown, it's crazy to see Dogwood and like whatever the bar next to it, I forget, they changed the name so many times. It's just all closed off and just gated up, when usually even on a Tuesday at 3 p.m., someone might be there having lunch or a beer, right? It's a good total shift. I've never seen this. It's insane.
So this is a little off topic, but you and I use the same dry cleaner. I just realized that.
Really? Do you go to, you had the same?
Shout out to Carlos at One Less Thing. But I love that how he's pivoted. I mean, it's made life easier for me that everything's pickup now.
Yeah, honestly, it has. And I know if my friend Safir is listening, I apologize too, because I've interviewed a friend and he has something called Hamper. They do a lot of kiosk, like a Netflix for dry cleaning, where you can drop it off at a kiosk. But even that business model is slowing down a bit because no one's going to the offices. Not as many people are going to offices. And so a lot of people are shifting to that. But shout out to Carlos. He was really friendly because I called and I was confused and he answered, and he was on the phone with me for like 3 minutes, chatting it up and like building a good relationship. And I was just trying to get something done before I head out to Colorado this week. So, but I really do love the hustle of local business owners and how they're adapting. They're still pushing through. They're doing their best to adapt despite all the circumstances and the challenges that they face.
Yeah. I think that's been the difficult thing of COVID is imagine working at something for 20 to 40 years and having it ripped away because of something you can't control, a virus, and just how we've responded to this virus.
Yeah. That's the part that's crazy.
Yeah, and I think you have to applaud people that just aren't going to let it go easily.
Right. No, I've even seen some people, I have some friends, and I don't know, despite where anyone listening is on the mask versus no mask situation, I know it's kind of as polarizing sometimes as, political parties, but I have seen a few people that I know and I like, and they post, I kind of agree. Like, I don't know where I fall on it, but it's a gym owner who I think it was in California, or I forget where exactly it was, but they were forcing him to close his gym down, and they boarded it up. And he's just openly like, they can find me, they can arrest me. He had a video on Instagram of him kicking down the wood and opening it back up for his gym members.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that they're fighting for their freedoms. I know people are like, well, it's not safe. But what you just said there, people who've been fighting to build their business their entire lives, 20, 40 years to build something that's their baby, that has been producing income for them, putting food on the table for their family. And now all of a sudden it's like gone down to zero or very close to it in some cases. And they're just supposed to close down and kind of like, let it go almost. It's crazy to me. So I don't know. It's tough. It's definitely a tough situation.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, regardless of where you sit with the no mask mandate, you have to applaud people that aren't giving up during this times. We were talking about doom and gloom earlier. It's really easy to fall into the doom and gloom. But if you're hopeful for the future, things get better in the long run. I read earlier this year, good times create weak men, but hard times create strong men. I think that's true. Things are going to be rough. They're rough right now. but we'll stick through it. We'll get through it, and things are going to be just fine in the long run.
I love that mentality. And I listen to a lot of motivational clips, especially in the morning when I'm trying to just get my state in more active and prepared for the day. And there was one video that was talking about, I forget the hiker's name, but I think there's a movie on it. I've never seen it, but the hiker who falls between the rocks and he gets stuck, like his arms jammed in there.
It's a Franco movie. I forget.
Yeah, it was like 129 hours or something crazy.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, was that it? But I haven't seen it, but basically the story was like he was there stuck for a few days and then eventually had to like cut his arm off with a pocket knife to survive. And I don't know if he said this or if it was just in the motivational clip, but they also mentioned another person who had a bungee jump accident and had to swim through crocodile infested waters with a broken collarbone. And then when they were both asked how everything was, they kind of both jokingly said it could have been worse. And so that shows, I don't know if they actually said that, but I love the idea of them having said that afterwards, because in hindsight, yeah, it could have been worse. I mean, they're here, they're alive, they made it. I wouldn't want to cut my arm off with a pocket knife, but I mean, it shows that we are much more resilient than we think. A lot of us, we feel like things can't get worse and that we're not prepared for it if they do. But we really are. If you look at people who have struggled and who have survived, I mean, we are much tougher than we give ourselves credit for. And so, like you said, I do applaud everyone who's pushing and they refuse to give up. They're going to fight until the end.
Yeah.
You have to have that mentality, I think, if you're going to be successful. Otherwise, I mean, the slightest challenges will stop you in your tracks.
Yeah, I agree with you. Talking about perspective, I'm sure you probably have seen this on social media somewhere. But they were saying if you're born in the early 1900s, you'd have had to deal with, the Spanish flu, World War I, World War II, and the list just goes on and on and on. Well, when you really put things into perspective, life is probably better now than it ever has been. I mean, you compare 2020 to 1920, life is certainly easier than it was back then. I mean, we've got the internet, we have varnished floors, we have electricity. Life's easier, and we'll get through it.
We really will. We have internet, we've got Xbox. I mean, there's so much entertainment. Netflix on demand. I mean, come on. I saw another funny joke when the pandemic was kicking off. It's like, our forefathers were called to go fight in war. We're being called to sit on the couch. It's not that difficult. But I mean, of course, now that we're all the way in August and people aren't really wanting to sit on the couch anymore, but that's for another day's conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Gosh, well, we talked about a lot of good stuff, from business and brews to how you grew that to how you're pivoting to be able to support breweries in this time of need, and also financial advice for entrepreneurs and people who maybe get paid irregularly, how they can manage their cash a little more. Is there anything we missed or anything that you'd like to also talk about before I let everyone know how to contact you?
Yeah, there's nothing else on my mind. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast and just taking the time to chat with me.
It was great to chat with you. And it's been a while since we've had a chance to talk. So I wanted to just touch base, and I'm happy to see you're doing well and that, Business and Brews is moving forward, because I really do miss events like that. But I think these virtual happy hours and also being able to tie some kind of philanthropic cause almost where you're helping business owners. I mean, I remember so many local breweries have been expanding crazy because it's very popular to do the outdoor bar area and all those games and stuff. And now it's just like no one really does anything on the weekend. It's like, well, what are we going to do? I'm just ordering food in and watching Netflix, So it's different times that we live in. But where can our audience go to learn more about you, to learn more about how they can get some help if they're looking to get their financial stuff in order?
Yeah, the best way to learn more about me is to go to our website, www.manskewealth.com, and that's MANSKE wealth.com. Or, I'm an everyday person. Call me on my office line, 713-581-1994.
Awesome. And do you have any social media handles or anything you'd like to provide in case people would like to connect with you or follow you?
It's all on the website. I have not tried to memorize those handles at all.
I wish I got the Chris Bello handle across all platforms, but I think I've added the 09 because some other Chris Bello took it. But I totally get where you're coming from with that. So everyone go to manskewealth.com. and you'll be able to see all of Eli's info on there. Cool. Well, thank you, Eli, once again, or Elijah. I don't know. Whenever people tell me either or, I'm like, well, now what do I say?
Yeah, it works either way.
Either way. Well, Eli, thank you once again. You add a lot of value, and it was great catching up. And I know our audience will really appreciate the message.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. I'm going to hit stop record.